Hi there guys, and welcome back to Nerd Kingdom for another video. I want to start this by saying a huge thank you to everybody. I haven't put a video out for like 4 months, and in that time this channel has continued to grow at a rate that has just been, uninterrupted by my lack of content. And I want to say I am still active on the channel. I do still read a lot of the comments, even if I'm unable to respond to them. I'm currently working on completing a qualification that will allow me to go into my dream career, basically. And seeing it continue to grow and continue to thrive, even in my absence when I've been just inundated with work, has just been a real treat and real privilege. So thank you very, very much. Thank you if you are new or if you've been here for a while. This channel has now surpassed 1,000 subscribers, which is just crazy, and I very much appreciate it. I'm going to be going back through the back catalogue of older D&D adventures, 2nd edition adventures, and I'm going to be hopefully bringing some of them to your attention, talking about some of the great campaigns and adventures that have been published in previous editions. I also think I'm going to be doing a lot more DM Guild stuff, because there's some great DMs Guild content out there. And a lot of it I've stumbled across myself, and some of it friends and players have recommended me onto. So I think what I'll be doing is I'll be taking a look at some of that stuff, and I thought there is no better place to start than Keep on the Borderlands. For a lot of people, especially who've played D&D for a long time, this was their start. There is a company called Goodman Games, and they have published an updated version of this adventure for 5th edition that is a fantastic quality. It's this adventure, and I think it's the adventure that comes after this one. But this is where a lot of OG D&D players got their start in the hobby. Now, one of the great things about this sort of older style adventure is they were really designed to just be dropped into the world. Now, if you look at the actual adventure itself, the first few pages 2 to 6, are just all about running the game. What I should say is they didn't expect you to have a giant rulebook at this point, because this was included in the earlier settlements for the game. So when we really start off on page 6 with just a bit of information now talking about the keep itself. So this is the Keep on the Borderlands, of course, and the main adventure takes place in a wonderful cave system. It is really good, even by today's standards of the game. I think it is probably one of my favourite cave systems that D&D have ever put out, called the Caves of Chaos. But before we get to the Caves of Chaos, we have essentially a town. We have a keep. That, again, a keep like this can be introduced and thrown into pretty much any fantasy world, or used to flesh out your own adventures. And we're given quite a lot of information about this keep. Now, there is a map of the keep that I'll put up right now. And you can see that there's a lot of different places in this keep for you to take a look at, giving you a little bit of information about it. And into page 7 we get given a wonderful rumour table. And rumour tables like this I'm a big fan of if they put something like this in modern day adventures. And what we can see is we've got basically a list of 20 rumours that your characters may hear whilst exploring this settled area about the caves themselves. And what's really cool about this is some of them are false. If they've got an F next to the number, it means that that rumour is false. So this leads for some really interesting dynamics where your players shouldn't expect every bit of information they're given to be accurate. And some of these work as fantastic plot hooks. So when reading through this adventure, this is a page I would definitely bookmark, because this is just fantastic for spicing up the world and giving your players a bit of a reason, and a bit of a lore dump, and a bit of a reason for going into the Caves of Chaos. On page 8 we get introduced to areas of the keep, and we get basically told all the main locations of the map that I've just shown you guys. So flanking towers, the entry yard, we get told private apartment, and then we have different types of shops that you would find there, and this is always really nice. And what 2nd edition did really well is it really fleshed out these areas and gave you a lot of information about them. So there's not only are there a lot of magical items and really rare different types of equipment here that a low-level party would love to get their hands on, I mean, you know, a thief and a party of thieves would have a wonderful time in this keep. But we also get given some really interesting NPCs, some potential help and allies that your party can stumble across. We get given, you know, a few traders and other individuals that your party may be really interested to get to know. And one that I really am a big fan of is, you know, a loan bank. Basically, you know, we'll give you some gold in advance, but we want it paid back. And this can lead to your party having some really interesting interactions. Of course, we have smithies, provisioners, you know, watchtowers, fountain squares, travellers inn, all that kind of thing. We even have a guild house, so a member of a different guild can come and they can stay at this house, and there's again a map of the guild house which can lead to further and future adventures. Again, these are just really interesting locations that just make this very small adventure. I mean, this isn't even 50 pages long, this entire thing. It just makes this feel like a very rich and vibrant location. So all of the information about the keep and what is involved and what sort of people and locations are inside the keep takes us all the way up to page 12. So it is a good chunk of this book that the adventure seems to expect us to stay within the keep and interacting with the locals for a fair bit of time. On page 12 as well, we get given our first sort of glimpse at what lies outside of the keep. And there's a map of the various areas and the surrounding landscape outside the keep. And again, this is one of those places where it's really easy to just fit a keep like this, or in fact this entire map, into a pre-existing world. There are some really interesting areas here. You know, we have Mound of the Lizard Men, Spider's Lair, Raider's Camp, and the Mad Hermit. These are, again, potential sort of quests that the players might go into or might do as they take a break from the Caves of Chaos. The Caves of Chaos then starts on page 14, and this is where the fun begins. 14 pages into this adventure, and we're only now getting to the main location. And this main location, you can spend, you know, so many different games playing in this area. There are so many different factions within the Caves of Chaos that it really makes it refreshing to experience and to explore multiple times. So there is a few charts for wandering monsters and things like that within the Caves of Chaos. I'll show you a nice map of the Caves of Chaos, and you can see the various chambers, the various rooms, the various areas that are contained within the Caves of Chaos. And it does look like a bit of a chaotic map at first glance, but it's also a really interesting one. And when we start to take a little bit of a dive into what this place is actually like, we can see that a lot of thought has gone into this. Well, the first thing we get given is that there are a lot of guard rooms we get told about. We get told about a lot of guard rooms and a lot of like lookouts, guard room 4 up here, for example. And all of these are really interesting because it sort of implies that this isn't a place for stupid monsters. If there are guard rooms, then you can really make your players sweat by having guards calling reinforcements, defending their areas of the Caves of Chaos, and really protecting themselves. And these guards, they're not just used to defending the caves from adventurers and, you know, humans and elves and dwarves, but they're used to defending the caves from each other, from other creatures that call the caves home. And that's quite an interesting thing here, that there is a sort of Caves of Chaos political structure going on within this adventure. We do have some DM notes in here which I find very useful, and it's basically, it tells you how the creatures will react to certain things happening. There are some in here, for example, where it mentions that orc losses cannot be replaced, which means that if the players decide to attack a few orcs and leave and come back, the orcs wouldn't have replenished their numbers in any way. So it means that the players have the potential of wiping out an orc tribe by basically fighting them in small groups, in small numbers, over the course of maybe several days or weeks of adventuring, as they slowly and surely push their way further into the cave systems. And again, it tells you how the orcs are going to respond to certain things happening there, and that's really useful for new DMs to sort of get an idea of how things are going. But these notes allow for these different tribes, these different factions within the Caves of Chaos to feel like actual factions and actual tribes. They behave in a way that just feels normal. One of the things that I do think is really cool about this is that because there are different tribes and different groups, different races hiding out in the Caves of Chaos, it is definitely possible for clever PCs to gain allies by wiping out like opposing tribes. Maybe the players can gain some goblin allies by killing all of the kobolds, or vice versa, and that leads to some potential. The potential of basically gaining access to different parts of the Caves of Chaos that they would normally just have to fight their way through. There's a lot of combat in the Caves of Chaos because it is essentially built as a dungeon crawl, so allowing your players the opportunity to bluff or lie or persuade their way through certain sections really makes the adventure a lot more interesting and adds a bit of a role-play opportunity there. Another thing that I think is important is that there's a lot of enemies here within the Caves of Chaos, so I think the ones that are more intelligent are definitely going to try and capture players. Now, it's very possible in an adventure like this, where it is a dungeon crawl designed for lower level parties, that you may have PCs going unconscious and getting captured. What I recommend as a new DM running this game is that you don't kill off your party. You don't kill off those players, but you have them be captured, dragged further into the Caves of Chaos, and be ransomed back to the party. Maybe for a favour. Maybe, we'll give you back your party wizard if you kill the orc chieftain. Then we'll do that. We'll consider that a fair trade and we'll let them go. If not, then you can buy him back for 200 gold pieces. Something like that. It incorporates just an interesting roleplay and turns a defeat into another quest hook. That person's player can go ahead and make a temporary hero to join the party, somebody maybe they've hired from the keep, and you've all of a sudden got a full party again, having a great time trying to save one of their allies. One of the coolest things in the Caves of Chaos is, in my opinion, the Chapel of Evil Chaos. I mean, this place just sounds really awesome and quite creepy, and sort of leads your party into the potential of finding undead, necromancers, and fighting, those classic Dungeons and Dragons enemies. There's also a place called the Hall of Undead Warriors that contains 20 skeletons. This is just fantastic. This kind of place is absolutely terrifying for low-level parties, but is just really interesting because it allows a low-level party who are unable to deal with those kind of challenges to come back when they're a bit higher level and see what mysteries they missed at a lower level. So this is a dungeon where it has replayability. The party can come back at a later date and things have changed. That just makes it just really worth your time to put something like this into your D&D world. The final thing we have is on page 24, and it is just an interesting section talking about non-player characters and NPCs. Within the town, within the keep, they're going to be encountering a lot of NPCs, and this gives you not only the class, sort of, a fighter. There's a list of 20 different NPCs the characters can come across, their strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, constitution, and charisma for each one, which is just really interesting if you're making a character from scratch, and their personality types. You know what kind of abilities a thief is going to have. They're going to have roguelike abilities. You can even run these characters as sidekicks from D&D 5th edition, and you've already got the stats rolled for you and what their personality is going to be like. So it becomes really easy, especially if you're using a tool like D&D Beyond, it becomes really easy to run a large party. Maybe it's not just a group of adventurers, maybe it's a group of adventurers plus a few townsfolk that are going into the Caves of Chaos to find something, and all of a sudden that becomes possible and becomes a really just natural part of this adventure when you have a wonderful roll table like this that is provided for you at the back of this adventure. I hope that is something that has satiated your thirst for a running the adventure sort of video. I mean, this is essentially a giant dungeon crawl, but it's a dungeon crawl that's done well. It has a lot of thought into it, a lot of politics, a lot of political intrigue, some really interesting locations listed, and a lot of replayability. with the same characters at different levels. So this is something that I really recommend that you give a look at, and check out Goodman Games if you haven't already. And they've done an updated version for 5th edition that you can take a look at and play straight out of the book. If you haven't had a chance to take a look at this adventure, I highly recommend it. It's a great one to throw into any campaign. Have a wonderful day.